recognized.
Thank you, Chair Fox and Ranking Member McGovern, and to the members of the committee. As a former member of the Rules Committee, I'm always delighted to be back. A year ago, the House considered the SAVE Act. This morning, I participated in a hearing on the Make Elections Great Again Act, a different attempt to take over our elections, and now we are discussing yet another Republican proposal, the Save America Act. This bill is so rushed and devoid of deliberation that Republicans were forced to make repeated changes to the bill in just the 2 weeks it's been introduced. In fact, the bill is so riddled with mistakes that yesterday my friend and chair, Mr. Stile, had to submit a late-night manager's amendment to try and fail to account for a couple of embarrassing flaws in this bill, flaws that Democrats pointed out last Congress and that Republicans insisted were non-issues. Nonetheless, flaws that we could have considered should this bill have been marked up in committee, which it was not, instead of attempting to haphazardly amend the bill on the fly. You told us the SAVE Act was just fine. Now you scramble to apply some Band-Aids and push it out the door in your rush to hand over control of the election to President Trump. So how can the American people trust any of this? This is amateur hour, and despite the desperate flailing, the bill remains egregious. So I want to ask my Republican colleagues, what exactly are you doing here? I would hate to step in the middle of a Republican internal politics. Senator Murkowski, a Republican from Alaska, already said today she opposes the SAVE Act, but this bill is not ready for prime time. But while we wait for you to decide how best to silence the American people, the Trump administration is blatantly disregarding the American rule of law. On January 24th, Attorney General Bondi sent a letter, more accurately a ransom note, to the governor of Minnesota, weaponizing federal law enforcement in a brazen effort to extort state voter rolls. While ICE kills American citizens on the street of Minneapolis, the Attorney General meddles in Minnesota's elections. And just earlier this week, President Trump said, and these are his exact words, that Republicans should take over the elections and nationalize voting. I want to be crystal clear about the substance of this bill. The Save America Act is more extreme than the SAVE Act. The Save America Act requires American citizens to show generally either a passport or their birth certificate to register to vote. But half of all Americans do not have a passport, and a passport, as Mr. McGovern points out, costs at least $130. Most Americans' number one concern right now is the cost of living, and this administration has done nothing to make life more affordable for the American people other than to mock it as a hoax. But Republicans are trying to charge U.S. citizens $130 each just to vote. If Americans want to use their real ID to register, well, for most people, that would be impossible because, as my Republican friends have admitted, real IDs in most states do not prove American citizenship. As you know, last year, our committee held hearing after hearing on non-citizen voting. Non-citizen voting in federal elections is already a serious crime, and it should be. And those laws should be enforced, and they are. But my colleague could not produce any evidence in those hearings to back up claims of widespread non-citizen voting. In fact, Speaker Johnson has admitted he has no proof of non-citizen voting in federal elections. He admitted it when we first considered this bill. He admitted it again recently. Worse still, the Save America Act would give Secretary Noem power over our elections. It would require states, as Mr. McGovern rightly points out, that's right, require them to provide their entire voter rolls to Kristi Noem's DHS. Secretary Noem has been criticized by congressional Republicans for her leadership at DHS. Some Republicans have even publicly called on her to resign. Yet here we are, considering legislation to give this important task, this vital task of voting, to an incompetent and reckless secretary who would have more control over the lives of Americans. Legislation that gives you personal data, your private information, like your address, to a department that sends masked agents to terrorize civilian populations. Republicans think ICE agents should be able to hide their faces behind masks, should be able to hide their badge numbers. But you, the American voters watching this, you must give your personal information to Kristi Noem. What could possibly go wrong? I mean, what happened to the party of small government? As costs skyrocket, as federal agents kill American citizens, Republicans are afraid to face their constituents at the ballot box. They would rather stop Americans from voting at all. That's why, late last night, Republicans amended this bill to take effect immediately, because their plans start here. They start now. But we and the American people will not let that happen. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Morelle. I'm going to recognize myself.